It's like we're battling two different entities. We're battling the political left and we're battling the mainstream media, which walks hand in hand with the political left, and it's getting more and more difficult to understand or really be able to see the difference. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. There was one the other night in the aftermath of Iowa. MSNBC was reporting. Normally I turn over there. I did not. On election night, I watched Fox News. I got over to #NeverCNN. It's an obligation for me to watch a little CNN because I tell you that I watch so you don't have to. And I did not catch this live, but I did see it on Memorex, where MSNBC lost their ever-loving mind that Donald Trump had actually secured 50+% of the vote in Iowa. And in the midst of Joy Reid saying, well, these are white people, they don't matter, you had this exchange where Rachel Maddows lost her mind.
The big picture takeaway from that, and I don't mean to be, again, too dark, as you said, on this, but it is not, if we are worried about the rise of authoritarianism in this country, we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. If we're worried about...
Wait, who's worried about the potential rise of fascism in the United States of America? I just want to break this down as it happens. Who's worried about authoritarianism? I'm not. The only thing that I'm worried is that if we have our election systems compromised in a way that the Democrats did in 2020, that would compromise the integrity of our nation's government. I'm worried about the deep state. There's only one political party that seems to be worried at all about the deep state. That seems to be worried at all that organizations within our government are working extracurricular to the Constitution of the United States of America, like the FBI, like the CIA. When the CIA violates basic constitutional rights and justifies it by either saying, well, we can't tell you what we did because that's secret classified, or, well, it was the point we were trying to get to was the most important thing. That could lead us to authoritarianism. So there's only one political party that is leading us down that road, and it's the Democrats.
Our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government.
How do they think this is happening? Like, the political left, you watch these folks, they go, oh, well, democracy's on the ballot. No, democracy is the ballot. And we could fall to authoritarianism or fascism. How does that happen? Have you ever wondered that? How does it happen? It happens when one political party makes it impossible for another political party to secure victory. It happens by using the authority of our executive branch of government and, by extension, the United States military even, to circumvent the ability of one political candidate to run or to win in a fairly contested election. It happens using the judicial system to boot a legitimate candidate off the ballot. This beginning to sound familiar? These are not Republicans doing this. This is not Donald Trump suggesting this. These are the Democrats that are suggesting this. There's only one political party that wants to prevent a candidate from running.
The leader who is trying to do that is part of that equation. Mm-hmm. But people wanting that is a much bigger part of that equation. Right. And the American electorate is made up of two major parties. One of those parties has been flirting with extremism on the ultra-right for a very long time. They've brought them in a way that they haven't been central to Republican electoral politics ever before, and I know because I've been studying this. But once you have radicalized one major party so that those are the preferences of the people who adhere to your party, the leader's interchangeable. And yes, Trumpism is sometimes what we call it. MAGA movement is probably a better way to do it. But there is an authoritarian movement inside Republican politics that isn't being bamboozled by Trump. They are pushing Trump to get more and more extreme, because the more extreme things he says, the more they adhere to him. And that is coming from a very large proportion of the American right that adheres to the Republican Party. And that's
you understand what she's saying there? That's Rachel Maddows from MSNBC. And a lot of these people on the set there, like Jen Psaki and Joy Reid, and I mean, they're dunderheads. Maddow is politically off her nut, but she's not stupid. And she bends over backwards to suggest to you that there's a group of people. So she's not going after Trump anymore. She's going after you. She's saying that your belief system, that you are either so dumb. This is an old trope on the part of the political left. When you sit down and you talk to a leftist, it always goes to the same place, no matter the subject. If you're talking politics to a dyed-in-the-wool leftist, they either conclude that you're either too racist or too dumb to understand their point. And if you were just a little less racist or a little more intelligent, you would agree with them. They cannot conceive of the idea that you have a difference of opinion about what makes America a better place. And this is what we're dealing with on the main stage there at MSNBC. And they're going to use this to try to further the idea of preventing where this goes. They want to prevent you from voting, folks. That's what they want to do. They believe that you're too stupid to vote. Watch where this goes over the next 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, especially if Trump wins. Now, back to Brian, who, speaking of voting, wanted to talk about the possibility of electronic voting and doing so in a non-person way. So am I understanding your point correctly, Brian, that you suggest that it might be a superior way to vote to do so online?
Well, I think so. Everything we're doing nowadays is online. You file your taxes online, even if you're at H&R Block or one of those other places. They're still sending it digitally to the IRS. Nobody that I've ever heard of has had their refunds taken away from them. We just do so many things online that are already secured by the government that, yeah, I think we could do voting online, but it has to be very safely done, right? Because hacking is a thing. And we already have a problem with voter fraud, but that's where there's a group of people that their job is to look on the list to see, like, I'm a Republican. Let's say the day before voting, for some reason, it pops up in the system that I turn to a Democrat or I vote Democrat. Well, that red flags me. So someone's then going to contact me. And if I disagree that, no, that's not what I did, then I have to go in person and prove who I am so that they can manually change it to what it should have been. Right?
What is broken that we're trying to fix?
Voting in person. The voting machines, there's many stories where we bought them from Venezuela,
right.
And they went to Canada.
Well, why wouldn't we fix that by going back the other way and using paper ballots that are collected and preserved?
Because the misfortunate ones is what we'll say. The left says voting in person is racist because there's some people of certain ethnic backgrounds that don't have the ability to get out to the voting center.
Wouldn't they say the same thing about online voting? There are certain people with certain ethnic backgrounds that don't have the ability or access to get online to vote?
Well, everything they disagree with is racist, so yeah, they're going to say that. But
right.
We're giving illegal immigrants phones. We give poor people phones. Everybody's got a smartphone. That excuse is out the door. If you don't have a smartphone, you know somebody that does.
All right, so in this concept that you're coming up with, what sort of documentation would you need, and how would you demonstrate said documentation in order to vote online?
Well, first you got to have the registration process. You got to sign up just like regular voter registration, except for this one, since we're doing it digitally, yes, you have to prove who you are.
So we're going to do that online too, right?
You can, or you can do it in person, either way.
Okay.
Because, you can verify everything online. I've filed my taxes before in the past, and the government knows all this. They'll ask me which vehicles have I owned in the last 10 years, which counties have I lived in the last 10 years. There's a lot of information that people aren't going to get from, scamming your email or hacking your computer.
The difference initially that I see with, for example, taxes, that the IRS is required to hold that document in perpetuity, right? Regardless of whether it's online or not. My wife would be a better one to ask about this because she worked in the tax system for a while, and she worked in the tax system when they transitioned from paper copies over to electronic filing, and she was intimately involved in that process. That said, in voting, the ability for you to vote secretly without regard for who you're voting for is considered sacrosanct. So I would go in and Matt Murphy would vote, but my vote, who I voted for, would that be recorded?
Well, it'd have to be. That way it can...
But it's not currently... That's not currently recorded.
Then how do they know that dead people are voting for Democrats?
You do that through voter registration.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, that's a matter of dead people registering to vote, and then dead people you sign off on. You don't know how dead people are voting necessarily, but unless they're voting in primaries. Let me. I'm not dismissing it, and I appreciate the call, and I appreciate the concept. I completely disagree with the idea of going to a fully electronic voting system, because I think that is far more fraught with peril than even the current system that we have. Matter of fact, I'd like to see us go away from it and go to strictly paper ballots and in-person voting. Or, if you cannot vote in person, specific reasons why you would be offered an absentee ballot. Military service, infirmity, whatever. What do you say about Brian's proposal? Maybe more people are in agreement with it, Brian, than I would give it credit for. I disagree with the concept of going to fully electronic voting. I think it would be if hackers regularly and routinely bust into secure organizations and secure systems and have their will with it, and because we don't have, I mean, the only reason that you know that I voted for Donald Trump in 2020 is because I told you, and I did. The only reason you know that I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 is because I told you, and and I did. So you would have to, in order to secure the system, you would have to have some level of knowledge as to how individuals are voting. You would have to match name with candidate, and that goes against the concept of a secret ballot.
One of the things that you'd have to worry about being at risk at is one party would only need to cause such chaos in the vote that it got thrown into the House of Representatives, and then the House ends up deciding the vote because the election was so confusing, they weren't sure who won. And if you're the party that's not in control of the presidency and you want to be, and you do have the House, then you just stole the election.
Right. No, I think it's going the wrong direction. That's my take on it, Brian. I'll leave it to others to determine for themselves how they feel about it. I get that it seems that if we modernize the system, but you have to depend on a system that is fair and equitable for all, that was created in a fair and equitable manner, and that is monitored in a fair and equitable manner. It is recorded how you vote, or rather, it is not recorded how you vote. It is recorded that you vote. And how you voted is determined by the counters. And those two, your name does not match up to the ballot. They mark you off in name when you go to the polls, and then they hand you the ballot, and then that at that point becomes an anonymous process. You have to necessarily, if you're doing this online, destroy the anonymity of the vote. And I don't think the American people are ready for that.